$10 million plus,
$10 million,
350 million.
350 million.
That makes a lot of sense. Now that makes sense.
Makes sense.
This causes me more pain than anything else. I just don't know whether I've said that publicly or not. So for the audience, Matan didn't give me these questions ahead of time. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd love to be on the hot seat for it. Yeah, we're a pretty humble company, so we accept all critical feedback. Well, there are many different amazing engineering ideas that we have. You know, when we did our hardcore analysis, we're in that sweet spot in the middle where it's going to work. Well, this works even better than we thought. Plane is performing better than we thought. The technology is working better than we thought. The technology's here. We're making it work. It's going to work. And it's just a matter of time, which I love. And there's a lot of people that would be quite interested in partnering with us. I appreciate every single retail investor that puts hard-earned money and supports the company. I think there's huge upside. It's going to be a very compelling product. I mean, it's going to be a great success story, right? So we're going to be kicking out hundreds of these aircraft per year, and they'll be flying all over the world. And it's the easiest airplane in the world to fly. So when we have kids come into the hangar and fly our simulator, we have done studies to scale it up to a certain larger size. And that
How
seems,
large?
to make an airplane that carries 40 people around.
Air Chile and JetSetGo. Why those two? You said on Bloomberg, the next 3 to 6 months are going to be explosive. What's going to be explosive here? Is amphibious still in the plan?
So the answer is
hello, everybody, and thank you for watching. Thank you, Brandon, for joining the channel. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of new people watching because this is not my typical video. This is going to be one of my best videos for sure. We have Brandon Robinson here. So I want to start off with, first of all, to anyone new who doesn't maybe know the company, doesn't know too much about you, just I guess the best way to start is introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about your background, the company, the product, what makes the Cavorite X7 special, and why is this a unique product people should be paying attention to?
all right. Well, thanks. So first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Matan. Anyone who is not like mashing the subscribe button on your channel, like I've actually done, is missing out. So really, just appreciate the opportunity. Thanks. And so a bit of a background about myself. I went through the military academy for mechanical engineering, and then streamed into the fighter jet program. So I flew jets for about just shy of 20 years in the Air Force. And then near the end of my career in the Air Force, I got really interested in business and maybe flexing some engineering muscles. And I was just fortunate enough to have my father, who was working in the general aviation space and had an aerospace company. And together we were very excited about this new eVTOL world, advanced air mobility. Think air taxis, right? So all electric aircraft that could take off like a helicopter, could more efficiently transport people within cities and land at your destination, cutting out tons of traffic and all that sort of cool stuff. But the more we looked into it, the more we saw an emerging market gap. Specifically, a lot of the aircraft were tailored for good weather, and these are all electric machines for very good weather only. We would have between 2 and 3,000 pounds of batteries on board. And so they would have lower payloads and they would fly slower. And we saw an opportunity to have a very complementary sort of service where we build a more operationally robust, faster, tougher machine that would go between cities instead of just, maybe 10, 15 miles within cities. And so we went about, creating the concept. The airplane behind you is the result. And yeah, we're really on a roll now. So we've flown a half-scale prototype successfully, and we're moving on to a full-scale aircraft. So in case anyone fades out by by the end of the episode, we will have a full-scale aircraft, a full-scale prototype, ready to go in the next 18 months or so. And that's a pretty exciting time to be looking into us from an investment perspective.
Very exciting. You know what else is really exciting? Your stock price. I know by the day to day, things don't matter. In the long run, we're shooting for the long run here, but we're sitting at 52-week highs right now at about a $2.40 mark. Earlier in the year, we were almost worried of being delisted under $1 for a while. How does it feel just right now? Does it feel relieving, justified, just excited? I mean, what do you feel right now with this stock price being at where it's at?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot over the past several years. Any post sort of IPO type structure is going to have a lot of overhang, essentially investment bankers that just want to arbitrage their way out. And you get structurally depressed much below, evaluation. And we kind of hit a critical point there. But we had faith in the team and the product, and we knew the retail investors like yourselves would be able to see, the significant potential. And I think what you're seeing right now is us deleting all of those players out of the cap structure, having no bad debt, having lots of money in the bank account, and having a good, very solid technological trajectory. So we've proven some of the technology at the half scale. We're building the full scale aircraft, and if you look at some of the comps, there's extremely robust upside. So I think this is just honestly a rebound to a more normal valuation. I think we have a lot more upside in the future as we tick those technical and regulatory milestones off.
Oh yeah. And speaking of that upside, recently, I think this week you said on Bloomberg, the next 3 to 6 months are going to be explosive. A bunch of us in the retail community are talking about this. This is not some language you just throw around. I'm curious when you say that, is this because you think the industry as a whole is going to be explosive, or is there some coming news? Maybe you can't talk about it, but is it the industry or news that you guys have that you haven't released yet? That's what's going to be explosive here.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I've got to be careful of what I say, but let's talk about the industry writ large, right? So there's been some great support right from the top brass in the White House for the advanced air mobility movement. The latest post on the 12th of September just reinforced the fact that this is something that the U.S. administration is 100% behind. In Canada here, we have various initiatives for sustainable aviation technologies. INSAT is another one with, kind of 350 million set aside for companies like ours. Um, we have not made any formal announcements, but it is publicly available information that we have applied for various non-dilutive funding sources. And of course, a company that has had their technology verified at a reasonable scale and is moving towards producing a full-scale aircraft of this nature. Again, twice as fast as a helicopter, hybrid electric power, does not need any infrastructure from a charging perspective that may lag, um, and is 75% cheaper to operate on a per mile basis. I mean, there's a lot of people that would be quite interested in partnering with us, with a company like that, I should say. And I can't guarantee anything in the next 3 to 6 months, of course. But like I said, there's a lot of potential for a company like that, if I was just being dispassionately analytical about it.
Okay. And the 350 million, I mean, I know you guys are like probably the best ones in Canada to be able to get a big portion of that. I mean, how is that split? How much of that can you guys get? I mean, did you apply for it and it's just like they're going to give a certain chunk, or you applied just for a specific amount of that? And how does the whole grant thing work actually with that?
That's a great question, Matan. So in Canada, INSAT is obviously carved up amongst a bunch of smaller companies, and so it's not like we're going to get half of the pool or whatever. But it's also multi-stage, in which case a win on a significant project sets you up for multiple applications. So a lot of companies have applied for multiple applications in INSAT. We will do the same, but we're looking forward to that sort of potential if it happens, that first green light that, hey, from a very strategic position in Canada, the government is behind companies like ours to support the development of this kind of sustainable technology. And also, of course, the technology is dual use for military as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of angles in which this works.
Awesome. Okay. So I think I'm going to get started with my questions because this was all introductory and initial current events and whatever, just initial questions that are according to now. So let's just get started with we're going to start a little lighthearted and get a little ramped up as we go. So,
Love it.
are you familiar with the Disney movie Meet the Robinsons? And did you ever watch it or get inspired by it? I think there's quite a lot of similarities with what you're doing in the movie. It's just interesting.
And remind me, Meet the Robinsons. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cartoon movie by Disney. It was like early 2000s. It's a boy who travels to the future, and in the future he feels like this is his home. They have flying cars there. He is part of the Robinson family he joins, and the Robinson family is basically a father, Wilbert Robinson, and all his children who create a bunch of awesome revolutionary technologies, and there's a bunch of flying cars that they use all the time. And I just thought it was an interesting thing that it's based off your guys' name. And I don't know if you ever watched it, but it's quite an interesting. It's a kids movie, but I rewatched it and I just found a lot of similarities that I thought it'd be worth a watch. But I guess you
Well,
have.
first of all, I mean, I love that sort of thing. It's like the Jetsons, right? Except without the time travel element, is what I'm saying. So I know I have not seen that. But what I love about it is, Disney has been inspiring kids for a long time, right? And what I like about what we're doing is producing a better future for the kiddos, right? So I've got three kids, 4, 8, and 10 right now. They're all very unique individuals. But what I love about what we're doing is building a better future for these kiddos. We're building a machine that will improve the way people move people and stuff around the planet, and pushing technology forward and making the world a better place. Is pretty inspiring. Just like that Disney movie likely inspired a bunch of people in terms of giving them a vision of what is possible, right? It's easy to sort of, I think, overestimate what we can do in 5 years, and very dramatically underestimate what we can do in 10 years plus time. Predicting what the future is going to look like in 2035, and my kids are teenagers and potentially starting jobs out of university. I mean, that place is going to be awesome if we keep on this trajectory. It's easy to get very negative with social media and all the naysayers out there, but I mean, there's an exciting future ahead, and we got to keep blazing that trail. It's pretty exciting.
Blazing that trail, pushing technology forward. I don't think you realize, but these are literally kind of what they were saying in the movie, actually. The whole movie was actually inspired by Disney himself, by Walt Disney.
Oh,
They kind of
excellent.
created that as a tribute to him. And at the end of the movie, there's a quote on there. And the main thesis of the whole movie is keep moving forward. And that's kind of a lot of what you're doing.
I love it.
They reward failure in the movie. It's
That's good advice for an entrepreneur. Anyone out there that's thinking about starting a business, yeah, you have to have a great team, a good idea. But I mean, grit is the defining factor, and keeping everyone moving forward in the face of adversity and a bunch of naysayers. There's a lot of people I talk to who are, experts in the field, and they've read some chat GPT stuff online, and they seem to know everything. But yeah, it's the technology's here. We're making it work. It's going to work, and it's just a matter of time, which I love.
I think every great product, every great technology has an interesting backstory. And I like that you have a unique name to it. It's not just like, I don't know, back in the day they used to name it everything just like something 5,000, this, that, whatever, these weird names. But yours is inspired by a very interesting book and written by a very interesting man, H.G. Wells. Can you talk a little bit about, for people who don't know, just a little about the backstory of the name and who came up with that? Was that you?
Yeah, and I get flack all of the time for the name. It's hard to say. People are, is it the Cavorite or what is it? And I'm on BNN and they're asking me 10 seconds to go before we go on air. What, how do you pronounce this thing? And so I get my fair share of flack, but it's an H.G. Wells book, First Men in the Moon, where Dr. Cavor basically comes up with this material that renders things weightless, and they're able to build a spaceship out of this and float up to the moon, and then meet a bunch of interesting beings that live inside the moon, which is pretty interesting. But I thought it was a great throwback to an author who had incredible vision for the future, right? And he had all sorts of just interesting ideas and thoughts on the future, very much a futurist. And I was inspired by him when I was a kid. I loved a number of his books, and I thought it would be a nice throwback
I
to
love
just
it.
a
I
human and epic
I don't
author.
think, yeah, I don't think I know. I don't think I hear much about him, and I don't know if people know. At least the younger generation know much about H.G. Wells, and I like that the name is after him because, I mean, like Nikola Tesla, people did not really know much about him until Elon basically brought him, popularized him a little bit more. I guess I would say I didn't know about him until Tesla really, but.
Well, yeah,
Um,
H.G. Wells, I think War of the Worlds, First Men in the Moon. There's Time Machine. There's all sorts of amazing literature, and I would highly suggest anyone that hasn't read them. Just yeah, it's a great book. It's a great author, well written, well researched, and an interesting futurist take from back then. And it's neat to see because you read him back then when he wrote his books. Several decades ago, right? And now, some of the technologies have come into play and some haven't, and it's pretty neat.
Hell yeah. I could talk about this fun stuff with you all day,
There you
but
go.
I'm sure people will be a little disappointed if we didn't get to the business. So let's talk a little bit about hover. Um, is amphibious still in the plan? That was originally in the Cavorite X3. Where is that in the future?
So the answer is no. It is an aircraft that's naturally set up for amphibious operations. The thing you have to know about amphibious operations is it adds a lot of weight, right? If you want to make an aircraft that's already challenging to build, even more challenging, then try to make it amphibious, right? It's set up for natural sort of water landings if you had to, because the way the tail is set up, there's a lot of buoyancy there, and it will keep you upright. It's a very tight cabin, well sealed, so you're not going to sink anytime soon if you happen to land in a body of water. Um, but there is no intent right now to make it amphibious. A long time ago, we had a really cool prototype. It's called the X3 for a new type of amphibious aircraft that I think is still viable. But we're going to build this one first, which is way more awesome.
Okay, awesome. So a follow-up to that, I guess, is what about the patents? You have some patents on those. Are those not don't matter to you guys anymore, I guess?
I think it's still valuable. I mean, and if we do decide to go amphibious in the future and produce an amphibious version, some of those landing gear patents are going to be quite useful. Um, and so, yeah, it has a lot of future potential. Is it going to be directly applicable to the first prototype and the first production series? No. Um, yeah, but lots of potential for future tech.
Okay. And are there any new patents that we don't know about yet that's been since the 10K? I think there's been 31 patents. Anything new?
So like any good company, I can't say anything that's not publicly released yet, but like any good company in this space, I mean, we are developing leading edge stuff. There is all sorts of amazing, there are many different amazing engineering ideas that we have, all the way from propulsion to acoustics to thermal management, that may or may not bear fruit. And so we're taking a look at those. There's, patents in a company like ours are something that's ongoing. And you'll see them when we file them, is the best I can say.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. I'm really wondering how you're innovating with acoustics, actually, but you can't speak much about that.
I can I can speak in general about how ducted fan acoustics work. So natural to investigate would be acoustic resonance chambers. So being able to bleed off some of the annoying frequencies within the casing itself would be a natural thing to do. Obviously, investigating with exotic rotor and stator dynamics. So now you can 3D print even on the aluminum side. So on the metal side, you can 3D print a stator array that is very interesting, if you'd like, that you could tailor the interaction between the rotor blades, so the fan blades, and the stator unit itself to dramatically reduce noise. A great example, and this is well published in literature, so it's nothing that we've figured out, but we know about. If you say have a straight stator blade, so that for those of you out there, it goes if you take a vertical cross section through the fan, you have the fan unit on the top, you have the stator array below that supports the motor group and also helps untwist some of the flow. Essentially, a set of fixed fins through which the fan has to push the air through. Um, if you have a straight stator array and a straight blade, as that blade passes over the stator that's straight, it would hit at once, right? It would create like a shock wave. The whole leading edge of the fan unit would hit the stator. And that would create like a sound, right? Like a very sort of high compressive sound. But if you have a really fancy curved stator, And when the blade sweeps over top of it, then you have a nice gradual sort of flowing of air over the stator. All that to say, it is less acoustically aggressive when you have these options available to you. And and that is an example of something that multiple examples of something that we're looking at. On the motor side itself, keeping the motor RPM as low as possible and keeping the blade tips as low as possible in terms of speed um, is another great way to reduce sound. And then, of course, well, that's all I'll say before I get into any proprietary stuff, but definitely something we're very focused on. As I publicly stated before, we think it's going to be between 5 and 7 decibels quieter than a helicopter in hover, and up to 20 decibels higher than, sorry, lower in sound than a helicopter in overflight at 1,000 to 2,000 feet. And that 20 decibels, that's 100 times quieter than a helicopter. So that's pretty significant for intra-city operations and landing in noise-sensitive areas.
Okay. I have a long question now because I'm going to tie in what you said with this question. Basically, my question though was after your transition flight, we only know about the May 15th flight. Um, how many flights have you done since, and how do those flights keep helping with, innovating the aircraft? Part two of the question is, you said you have a lot of ideas to innovate, just like this acoustic example you gave us. You probably always have new ideas. When does it end? Like you guys initially had planned to just build the X5 full scale, and then, you realize you can build more, the X7. As you guys are scaling the X7 now, I mean, you just spoke about new ideas, possible new patents that will be in the future. I mean, I feel like as an entrepreneur, ideas never end. And where, two-parter, I guess, is how has flying the aircraft help you get new ideas? And like, have you guys been flying a lot more? And will there be an end? I mean, you can scale to X9, X12, X whatever. Like, uh, I don't know. How do you feel about just like new ideas when you need to like build so much? When is the end result, I guess? Yeah.
So another really great question, Miten. Thank you. Okay, so to hit part one of your two-part question, what you saw on the 15 May flight was the result of a very extensive flight test program. We had flown it a number of times. And for the astute observer, you saw us maneuvering the aircraft around, and we were quite obviously very comfortable with the way the aircraft flew during transition flight. So potentially it wasn't our absolutely first one where we got close to transition, if that makes any sense. And I'm just speaking to common sense. So um, really extensive flight test program. You saw the final flight that we did, where it was the absolute full transition, very comfortable. And like I said, it was the most boring flight anyone's has ever seen, which in aerospace, boring is safe and safe is awesome, right? That's what we're going for. And I'll just be frank, I mean, we haven't flown it much since then. We don't need to. What I want, and it speaks to focus. So there's maybe two trajectories. One trajectory, I keep annoyingly flying this, and it takes up the team's time, and produces some great video, but we've already hit the Pareto distribution of 80/20 in terms of what we learned from it and its utility to inform the full-scale aircraft. And then it slows down development for the team on the full-scale aircraft. That's one road we could have walked down. We decided that we've learned enough from it. The technology is working, and just shift focus 100% to the development of a full-scale aircraft. And that's what we're doing. And that speaks to the second part of the question, when is enough? When do you stop? I did watch your video, and the transition from the X5 to the X7 was more about how well the aircraft performed and more detailed aerodynamic analysis of the X5 platform at a full scale. And we just said, listen, I mean, the plane is performing better than we thought. The technology is working better than we thought. The cabin is big enough for 7 people with a few modifications. We'll be able to lift that much weight. Why restrict it to 5 people when it can actually carry 7? And so we just, it wasn't a sort of a shift in philosophy whatsoever. It was a sort of wow, this works even better than we thought. And so now we can just develop a more robust platform that's even more useful. Carrying around 6 people plus one pilot in the front is better than 4 people. That's commercially it gets a little sketchy when you're only carrying around four people. And not to knock the competition, I'm just, when we did our hardcore analysis, six is a really useful number, from a commercial perspective. Um, and we've been asked to do studies on how, much we can scale up this technology, and it really is a technological platform. And so we have done studies to scale it up to a certain larger size, and
How large?
that seems to work out pretty well. I just don't know whether I've said that publicly or not. So, um,
I was gonna follow up with that. I remember last time you spoke about Reynolds numbers. I didn't
yeah,
really
it
know
would be
what it was. Now it
natural.
makes sense. How
Yeah,
how much
it
could you
would
scale
be
it?
it would be natural for a company like us to look at scaling it up to, the 9 to 12 passenger sort of size. Maybe it's twin engine, maybe it has a unique sort of cargo loading and unloading scenario. That would be a very natural thing for a company like us to do. Um, it's not, we're not going to scale it into what's that flying aircraft carrier in one of the movies. Maybe it was Avengers or whatever, where they have the, flying aircraft carrier that size. I mean, that makes no sense. You'd have to produce so much thrust. You'd dig a hole to the center of the earth if you try to take off. But reasonably, it will scale larger than we have. But the devil's in the details. We have to pick the right motors that are available to produce the right thrust, and we got to watch downwash and all sorts of different operational elements. Yeah. So yes, we have looked at scaling it. I want like a two-place version of it. I want a smaller version where I just can fit myself and my wife, and we can just rip around in this like sports car version of it. That'd be so cool.
That
Anyway,
would be. I'm curious actually what you think on a personal level of all the other companies on the complete extreme. There's companies building a 40-seater aircraft, and then there's companies building, these little one-man drone. Some are even going after ultra lightweight category, which I don't understand. How are you going to build under 255 pounds? What are these just dead ends? What do you think of those extremes?
well, this is where I get in trouble with my PR folks because I'm a little too, let's say, honest with everybody. Um, it gets a lot difficult as you scale up. And for all the technical people online, as you scale up size, a lot of things scale in terms of propulsion as a squared function, right? And weight scales as a cubic function. It's a reason why humans are limited to a maximum size, and squirrels can jump off a roof and be fine, and horses cannot jump off anything, right? Because the bone density of a human, the bone strength increases as a square function, right? The cross-sectional area of your bones is how strong, how much they can support. But as you scale up, your weight gets bigger as a cube function. And so at one point, the lines cross, and that's as big a human as you can get. There's in the Guinness Book of World Records, I think the tallest human ever got to be like 9 feet tall, but he could barely walk downstairs without his bones breaking. And
Wow.
yeah, and so there's scaling laws, and it's a fascinating thing in the world of science. Scaling laws are really, really interesting, right? Like that's why a bumblebee can fly the way he flies, and you couldn't create an airplane that's can carry humans around that flies like a bumblebee, flapping its wings like that. Doesn't work because scaling laws permit different things at lower scales. So in one way, I say it's actually easier to scale down, and that's why you can create these drones that zip around, and those lighter aircraft might actually be pretty cool from a personal use perspective. And so I actually do like some of those smaller designs because they have more freedom from a physics perspective. On the larger scale, someone says they're going to be using ducted fans, distributed electric propulsion to carry, to make an airplane that carries 40 people around. What I know about physics, I don't know how that's going to work. And so good luck to them. I have no idea how that's ever going to function in the short to medium term. But I don't know what I don't know, right? The more you learn about the world, the more you should realize that you don't know much about it, right? My son Ethan asked me a question the other day, like, how come we don't fall to the center of the Earth? Because everything is just space, right? Empty space, molecules are empty space. And together we learned the real reason. It's way more complicated than you might think. But I mean, a healthy admission that you don't know what you don't know is pretty good. So to summarize, not sold on these much larger aircraft. Pretty stoked about the smaller ones in terms of what we could get away with, as long as they're safe. And then we're in that sweet spot in the middle where it's going to work.
Awesome. What do you think then about also autonomous flight? Because especially if there's going to be these, one, two-seater aircrafts. I mean, not everyone can be a pilot. And if this whole industry does take off and we're going to start seeing a lot more of these aircrafts in the air, I mean, it's going to be just like a mess. Shouldn't all of these be autonomous? How do you go about that? I mean, you technically already built an autonomous aircraft with the half scale X5.
Absolutely.
Why not continue that?
So another great question. I will say it's going to be a multi-part sort of answer. First, most of the airplanes that you fly in commercially, especially the larger ones, are capable of autonomous flight almost entirely.
Right.
From the
Yeah.
takeoff, which is hands-on, there's aircraft that, from the first 30 seconds where you rotate, gear up, flaps up, autopilot goes on, that airplane can fly and navigate, reach its altitude, and autonomously shoot an approach and land and stop on the runway without a pilot ever touching it. It's called Category 3 Charlie approach and landing. You can have a Boeing 777 with Cat 3C rated pilots and airport. That airplane will land so accurately on the airport that they had to start shifting and adding errors in because they were all landing within like a few feet of where they're supposed to, and they were denting the runway. That's how good autonomy is in 2025 in commercial aircraft. And we have civilian aircraft now where you can press a button. Cirrus SR-22 Tango. Press a button, like say the pilot you're flying with goes unconscious, you can press a button. That thing can autonomously select in the nearest suitable airport, fly an approach, flare, land, and stop on the runway, and thereby saving the passenger's life. So autonomy is really cool in 2025. But in terms of not having a pilot on board and this robot airplane shows up and you just like somehow get in it, like maybe there's a somebody that helps you with everything, you get in and get strapped in and there's no pilot on board. I don't think that that's going to happen in terms of carrying passengers around anytime soon, fully autonomously. That will happen in the future, but that's a distant future, in my personal opinion. Now, will we carry cargo around and flying very specific routes under very specific conditions, fully autonomously? Now that makes sense. Not overflying, densely populated areas and with the right type of machine. That makes a lot of sense. Something goes wrong, someone's iPad doesn't get to them, and that's the end of it. Um, and then the third part of it is fly-by-wire, which is different, right? Helicopters, I've flown a lot, and they're hard to fly. There's not a lot of fly-by-wire helicopters until you get into the big, $10 million plus beasts of a machine. You let go of the controls in a helicopter for 1 second, you're probably going to crash if you're close to the ground. Um, in the type of airplanes that we're building now, from an autonomy perspective, people don't realize that or appreciate, I think, the type of flight controls that we have on board now, where you can create an airplane that is so stable. Like I take the hands off of the controls on the X7, it will stay put exactly, right? It's GPS anchored. The flight controls do what they need to do to keep the wings level and the pitch, the pitch of the aircraft level, and it just sits there and it does whatever it needs to do to sit exactly there. If I want to go up, I pull back on the stick. And it's the easiest airplane in the world to fly. So when we have kids come into the hangar and fly our simulator, which is really, really accurate, they can land on an aircraft carrier. Like a kid that's never flown anything before, maybe plays video games, can go and land on an aircraft carrier, and first time, easy, no problem. That's how easy some of the modern airplanes are to fly with the right flight control setup. And so that's a long answer to your autonomy question, but that's kind of how I see the general landscape.
No, it's great. I have a bunch of follow-ups, but you know what? Based on going off the simulator stuff, I was really curious. How accurate is the simulations to real world? Like, is it
Oh
like
man,
199%, 90, 95? Like, how?
it's properly done. We're in a world now where it's like 99% accurate. So that's with a giant asterisk. You need to have an active flight test program and then update and recalibrate your simulation model for realistic performance. Great example on our half-scale prototype. We had a physics-based modeling system whereby roll rates, pitch rates, stability in all axes were incredibly accurate. Hardware and software in the loop from a navigational perspective and a flight control perspective. So, we actually had the brains that were, sitting there on the desk that were actually in the aircraft itself, sending signals to the emulator that was then controlling the aircraft in our simulation environment. And it got so good to the point where we could actually predict potential negative behavior in the sim before it hit the airplane and we saw it. And now this was the result of a lot of flight test data going back and recalibrating the sim and getting it super, super accurate. But in the end, we ran hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mission profiles before we even did one flight. We would see every once in a while, like, oh, look at what is it doing here? Sure enough, in the airplane, it would have done that. We corrected it first, and then we went flying. On that last test flight that people can see on the YouTube channel, for example, we predicted a certain battery usage, right? It's going to use 27% to do that little thing and then land. It was within 1% of predicted battery usage for that flight. And the speeds that it attained and the pitch behaviors, everything were modeled almost identically. How it flew, the roll rates, the altitude that it maintained. And so we're in a really cool era right now where we have so much computational power available. As long as you have the right architecture that surrounds the simulation development, it's incredibly valuable. So it's an incredibly accurate. So yeah, we're at that 97 to 99% space right now, which is awesome.
Awesome. Earlier you spoke about some of the top line helicopters being around $10 million a piece. And you spoke about then how much better your aircraft would be at all that, which I totally agree with all that. But your aircraft is also, at least you guys have said you're planning to sell it at 10 million a piece. So that would be on the higher end market of like those expensive helicopters. Can you just talk a little bit about the economics of the pricing? I don't know if you will, like if you can imagine a sort of supply and demand chart. Where is your equilibrium? Like, why not price it at less and you can maybe sell much more? Who is the target market for a $10 million aircraft, you know?
So one thing I will correct that gets I get misquoted a bit. Helicopters are not going anywhere anytime soon, right? So out of 75,000 helicopters that operate on a daily basis around the world, half of them, less than half, call it 40%, require long duration hover type missions, right? Search and rescue, where you got to long line somebody out of a boat that's sinking or something, right? You have to hover in place for a very long time. None of the um, eVTOLs or even hybrid eVTOLs like us are good at that mission, just speaking quite frankly. Um, the distributed electric propulsion does not, generally speaking, means smaller rotor diameters, which means less efficient hover flight. And that has a penalty in terms of energy consumption in pure hover. But for the other 60% of global helicopters, the global helicopter fleet that just go from one place to another, and they just need the vertical takeoff and landing in order to get in and out of a place where there's no runway infrastructure. So they're landing on a helipad or a parking lot. So that's 60% about of the global helicopter fleet. If you're just going from point A to point B, a machine like ours will save you a ton of money as an operator, and it's going to get you to where you need to go in a faster, cheaper, safer way. That's just a better mousetrap for traveling via helicopter, right? So, medical evacuation, EMS type services, organs, and radioactive isotopes being transported around the place. Anytime you need to get something to a remote place, um, that's time sensitive. Maybe you're building a rare earth mine in northern Quebec or Ontario. I was just at the Rare Earth Mines, Magnets, and Motors Symposium or conference. Really well done, by the way, by Adams Intelligence. But what I learned there is, I mean, the airplane like ours would be perfect. I mean, they spend so much time just helicoptering things around and people around, super expensive. Saving 75% cost per unit mile is huge, huge for those folks. Um, yeah, so uh,
What about it's 75%, you're saying more or less per unit mile, but that's compared to current cost of
of helicopters.
helicopters, which
Correct.
are
Equivalent helicopter.
expensive. So
Yep.
with that 75%, there should probably be a lot more usage um, in demand in general. How does that compare though to competitors in the eVTOL space who are also, there's a lot of companies also building for very specific use cases. I mean, not even Joby and Arch are going after air taxis, but you have the LOIs going after very just specifically cargo, autonomous cargo, like we spoke about earlier a little, right? You have Jump Arrow going after just medevac. How will it compare? Because yours is more of an all-purpose. They're going after very specific. I don't know what their unit cost per miles and stuff look like. I mean, I know there's also a bunch of space for everyone, but like, where do you look at the economics of that kind of?
Yeah. And so the drone delivery in an all electric machine is going to be limited to shorter ranges, if that's what you're kind of getting at. So I guess the biggest 30,000 foot perspective on this is that it really comes down to the mission, right? So if you need to fly in bad weather or have a machine that operates year round at ranges, above 100 to 200 miles, and speed matters, you're just moving stuff around. I mean, our hybrid electric machine where you don't have to have any charging infrastructure whatsoever is a very compelling thing. If you're moving, 100 pounds of stuff, 15, 20 miles, then you're going to select a different machine. Maybe it's an autonomous aircraft as long as the regulatory bodies allow it, because all these aircraft have to operate under an air operating certificate as well. Everyone focuses on the type certification and the production certification, but to operate in the wild profitably, they'll have to be operated under a certified air operating company. And that means you're operating with the right procedures in place. You're operating within the rules of the airspace structure. You're not overflying certain areas that are not allowed to be overflown. These sorts of things. It sounds trivial, but it's actually one of the more complicated things to gain and maintain an air operator certificate for a prescribed mission set is quite challenging. And so all these companies that eventually will try to make money with these machines will have to do that. And so it comes down to really defining the mission and then choosing the appropriate machine for the mission. I think there will be a lot of very successful machines, and they'll find niche markets. Again, ours is simply for the global helicopter fleet of comparable size that simply needs to move 4 to 6 people around, or 1,500 pounds of stuff around, between cities and between locations that are unprepared. I mean, it's going to be a very compelling product for those folks.
Makes
Um,
sense.
yeah.
So so speaking on that a little bit then, about the demand, most companies in the space are taking all sorts of non-binding LOIs. Can you talk about the decision you made? I like how you explained why you guys don't take these LOIs. And then you guys have only actually taken two with Air Chile and JetSetGo. Why those two? From what I know about them, they're not really doing, or they're not the right client for what you kind of just said. I mean, they're operating planes. So why did they reach out, and why did you even accept an LOI from them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd love to be on the hot seat for it. Here's the truth. I mean, we could have sold thousands of these things pre-sold, loosely binding LOIs, no legal sort of requirements. I think it's coming out that some of the major companies struck back behind the scenes sort of equity deals for some of them as well, which seems a little disingenuous. Fundamentally, we're just looking for good partners to investigate. So the JetSet Go one was an early one where we had excuse me, the opportunity to partner with a company that had deep understanding of what it was like to actually operate in India, right? And we pride ourselves on our detailed operational research. One of their operations guys was Canadian and had all of the data, and they knew, what sort of economics would be required, what the altitudes they were flying at, what the routes look like, government incentives to potentially lower ticket prices, and That's the type of people that we want to talk to and partner with. It's less about pre-selling our aircraft. That was a good part of it, but more about a partnership to develop a realistic plan and get some real data so that we can refine the product. And so we were pretty happy with that. We discovered what we could do, what would be challenging um, from an economics and performance perspective in that specific area. And we're investigating partnerships that can give us the data that we need to make the product even better, right? Air Chile was a great one. Our CFO had worked with them previously. They're a legit operator of helicopters. And through that partnership, we can gain an incredible amount of insight into what it means to operate in that location, boots on the ground. What's it like on a daily basis? What are the mission lengths? What are the soft spots? What would be beneficial? What would hurt them from a financial perspective. And so hopefully that answers your question. Again, it's
Mhm.
more about high quality partnerships than it is some flashy press release. And again, we could have pre-sold thousands of them, right? Or order book. It'd be pretty easy to see the airplane in the back there and sign a bunch of companies up for 1,000 of these things on some non-binding term sheet. But we decided not to do that.
Not only you answered it, the answer is very comforting because that's a great answer and a great reason to do that. So thanks for clarifying for people who didn't know and myself. Um, let's move on to something someone wants me to really ask. On your website and the contact on your contact page on your website, you have two addresses, the one in Canada, and then you have an Ohio address. What's up with that Ohio address?
This causes me more pain than anything else for various reasons I won't go into. But we have a Delaware Corp, right? Horizon Technologies is a US based Delaware Corp. It's a very useful tool potentially to expand our operations into the US if we ever need to, but it doesn't have any people working there. That's just um, a useful corporate structuring tool to be able to, again, take advantage of certain things in the future and pave the way if we want to expand into, say, Ohio or somewhere like that, just like Joby has done, for that matter. And so no one should look into it. That's just a corporate thing, and it's not useful from an analysis perspective for anyone that's going to make an investment decision whatsoever.
Good to know. Um, last time also you spoke about the backstory of Canso and how they got involved. Can you speak about William George Brumder and how he got involved, and then Dustin Shindo?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll stick to publicly available information, right? Brumder's a 13G filer, like a passive investor, not an activist. He takes positions in a number of different companies. He has positions in GoPro um, and a few other micro cap companies. He's a buy and hold guy. He looks for, as I can infer from our limited research, um, and it's that's that. There's nothing weird about it. He finds companies and does a lot of research and looks for buy and hold opportunities for significant upside, as far as we can tell. Um, he's not affiliated with any of the deals that we've done so as far as I know. And that's it, right? That's just a very sort of simple case. Dustin Shindo was kind of the principal behind the SPAC, the Pono Capital 3, that coordinated everything. And you can see from the filings that he remains, a significant holder and a significant believer in the potential upside. And so, just again, high net worth individual, a lot of experience in the public markets, really likes what we're doing and is along for the ride, and has been an amazing supporter up to this point. Excuse me.
Yeah, you can go get some water if you want.
Yeah, I'm just here. I'm gonna go off camera for in 2 seconds. You can go get some water. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, between the mining conference and a lot of interviews since then, I've just been basically talking 24/7. So yeah.
All good. Speaking of that, real quick, just how was it to meet Steve Wozniak? Did you talk to him? Did he check out the aircraft? Was he interested?
So unfortunately, I didn't get to meet the Waz. Unfortunately, yeah, just it was the bad timing thing. But he did come out and see the airplane. We got some pictures with him and some of the folks that were there. He loved the machine. Apparently, the keynote was excellent as well. I was doing a BNN Bloomberg thing at the exact same time that he was presenting, so I couldn't be in two places at once, which is slowly becoming my biggest problem these days. Yeah, but it was great. Love the guy, love what he's done. He loved the airplane. It was great to see him and with the team, and maybe we'll try to post some pictures a little bit later.
Cool. On a personal level, I'm quite curious of this. So I'm a web developer and I know what web development costs should be. And I was seeing on your 10K that you guys are paying over $150,000 for web development costs. Is that marketing involved or something else in there? I don't know. What is that about? Is that accurate? I mean, I know you guys are a public company, but whoever's doing that, that's an expensive website.
Well, so it's not though. It is maybe in your world, in a public company world. It depends on what you wrap into it, right? So it's the entire structure of the website. It's a lot of the media that goes into it, and so. I think, corporate tech and development, all the imagery that goes into everything as well, alongside the IR piece, right? The IR website is a completely separate one that has to be very strictly maintained and has to adhere to a bunch of different, like if you click on the IR website or investors button, it's going to take you to what looks like, of course, and all companies do this, what looks like that, just part of the website, but it's a completely separately hosted thing with with a strictly managed investor relations platform that has to pull all the SEC data and put it in there. So I mean, yeah, it's much more than you might think, and there's a lot of admin costs behind that and a lot of development costs. So it's like a site, a public company site's like a normal website on steroids, where there's a lot of background stuff that we need to unfortunately take care of.
Fair enough. I'm not familiar with it, but yeah, cool.
And those costs add up over time, especially the hosting of the IR component as well, right?
If you have a lot of traffic, I guess, I don't know how many people are on the website, but definitely hosting can get pricey. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Uh,
Maybe it's a future sort of thing you could set up your own company and do it for a little undercut the folks, and away we go. If
maybe
you
we
ever
could
do,
take
let me
that
know
further.
because we'll give you a call.
Okay, you know what? I have an idea. I was thinking of making a video of just looking at your website and telling you what you could improve and sending you that. I'm gonna do that
Uh,
later on. And
that'd
just
be
you guys
fantastic.
could
Yeah,
do it on your
perfect.
own, but just like a free consultation, what I would improve.
Yeah,
Um,
we're a pretty humble company, so we accept all critical feedback. It's one of those things that's never perfect. The website is you could just spend all your time, all day, every day, kind of just tweaking things on it. But yeah, would love to hear
yeah,
what you think.
awesome. We'll do that. Um, You spoke about a few times I've heard you say now that the FAA is bombarded with like over 600 applications for these eVTOLs because there's so many companies now. And you guys are obviously not going through that. That's going to be a slower process. You're going through the TCCA, which is a faster process, and because you guys are in Canada. And you've spoken about that in the last podcast. So whoever hasn't heard or known much about that, you should definitely refer to the first one. But my question to you here is, since you guys are doing that and then going to the FAA via bilateral agreements, which is going to be a much quicker process than basically skipping the 600 applicants, you guys are like first in line for TCCA from in Canada, from what I know, from what you've said. There's probably not a lot of people in line. Why do you think these 600 other plus companies aren't following your route and going to Canada and doing this? Or do you think maybe they just don't know and this is the start of a big wave of everyone moving to Canada? Because also
Well,
Canada has just amazing history of aviation.
yeah, that's right. So a couple of things there. One, the 600 number, like I just said that as an extreme. Like I don't really, like I haven't taken a look at each individual application. The point was, is there's a lot more, of these companies in the US. That's kind of, Silicon Valley kind of kicked it off, and that's where they all started. So there's just a lot more, call it an order of magnitude more companies in the
Yeah.
US, and that leads to the same situation, order of magnitude, sort of rough numbers, more folks looking for certification and annoying the FAA and without proper due diligence on their part, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to maybe put out a press release that, oh, we started the certification process because we talked to them, sort of thing. And in Canada, I don't really want to say it's going to be shorter, and that implies like a less due diligence, but it is a focused effort, and the Canadian Transport Canada Civil Aviation Group really knows what they're doing when it comes to this stuff. They've looked at it quite deeply, and expect it to be a deeply thorough certification. I mean, they're under no obligation to grant us some fast-tracked certification process. But what we do like is the focus and the ability. And we have a plan to bring resources to the table to help them help us as well. They will be extremely diligent in their process. And I think anyone that's investing in the company would love to hear that it's going to be a very detailed process, and it's going to result in a very safe airplane. And so I just wanted to clarify those sorts of things. But yeah, it's great to be in Canada from that perspective, to get that attention, and to work with the regulators to come up with a framework that makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Um, so after all this goes well, in a perfect world, where is Hover in 2040?
Oh,
In
um,
15 years, actually, yeah.
all
When the
right.
market is 1 trillion, according to Morgan Stanley, which I don't know how
Yeah.
accurate that is.
So, I mean, it's going to be a great success story, right? So we're going to be kicking out hundreds of these aircraft per year. Um, and that they'll be flying all over the world under various sort of air operating certificates and type certifications. They'll be getting people, like I said, to the hospital in half the time of a typical helicopter at a dramatically reduced cost. They'll be moving critical goods and cargo, helping setting up maybe mines, like I talked about in northern Canada, extracting materials. They'll be doing all sorts of stuff. Again, like they said, that global helicopter fleet that simply goes from point A to point B. It's going to be pretty disruptive from that perspective. So it's going to be pretty exciting 15 years from now with these aircraft widely proliferated. Honestly, just moving people and things around in a much more efficient, faster, and safer way.
And now the exact opposite of that question. In a hypothetical world where Hover didn't even exist and you were just you, but no Hover, what companies would you look at or join if you were, just going to be some hired CEO or whatever? If any company could hire you, who would you be most excited to be a part of?
These might be counterintuitive answers, but off the top of my head, I mean, and for the audience, Matan didn't give me these questions ahead of time, so this is a true sort of raw. Let's think about it. I love Electra Aero, for example, the short takeoff and landing folks. They're ex Aurora Boeing, I think Aurora Flight Sciences people that know what they're doing from a prototyping perspective. They're actually a hybrid electric aircraft as well, although they don't advertise that. Short takeoff and landing, cargo and logistics with just a world-class team. That would be a really cool one to be a part of. Uh, Joby's doing it right too, from an all-electric perspective. So I have my reservations about battery costs on an ongoing basis and the operational viability of an airplane that's constructed like that, in terms of its bad weather and cold weather performance, and its slower speeds and concordant sort of operational utility in the real aerospace world. But they built a elite team. Jobin Benvert really knows what he's doing, and it's going to be exciting to see them get a type cert, get their production cert, and then start to operate these things in the wild pretty soon. And we'll see how the economics distill for those folks. So that would be an interesting group to yeah, it'd be an interesting group to look into and potentially help along. But um, yeah, so but I'm not allowed to choose myself, right? Like I would really prefer a hybrid electric machine that has the legs and the operational flexibility of ours. So if anyone came up with the thing behind you, I would want to join that team. That like I said, it goes a bit faster, it can fly in bad weather, it has a lot more operational flexibility. Like I've been in some pretty sticky spots over the years in the air, and it always helps to have multiple layers of safety and redundancy and on board. So that's
Cool.
the team I'd pick.
No, yeah, that answers it. Yeah. And if people watch my channel, they should know Electra Arrow. I've shown it before.
Yep.
So very cool. We are at the end of the time here, so I'm gonna wrap it up with this final question for everyone watching. Um, would you be down to do a live stream Q&A with everyone watching? They can ask you whatever they want on the next one because I could ask you a ton of questions, and this is a lot of fun. And I don't know when the next one will be, and if we could have a next one, but I would love it to be with the retail community, and they can maybe live. We'll schedule a time where they can all ask you questions themselves.
Yep, I got thick skin. I'm a pretty straight shooter and would be happy to, right? And I appreciate every single retail investor that puts their hard-earned money and to support the company. I think there's huge upside, and I have all the time in the world for each and every one of them. So be happy to do that. Let's organize it. It could be four
Awesome.
people, it could be 50, it could be 500. Let's do it.
I don't know how much, but it'll be a lot of fun, and I know people would love it. So you guys heard it here first. Get your questions ready. I don't know when it'll be, but we'll schedule it out. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, stay thinking, question everything, and peace out.